He is Joe Connor. He has testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Foreign Relations and the Senate Judiciary Committee during Eric Holder's confirmation hearing. It still went through, though. His articles have been published in the Wall Street Journal, New York Post, and many others. He's appeared on TV and radio with Megyn Kelly, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Mark Levin, and Glenn Beck. He currently writes at WeWinAmerica.com and contributes at Town Hall, Breitbart, and Red State. Joe, welcome to the Liberty Hour.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Charles.
So I have you here. I invited you on. I want you to stay for 2 segments to give some time to kind of explain the story. And so take your time. Don't go right into the goods yet. I want them to understand why you're here and why you constantly write about this type of thing. So tell the listeners what happened to your father in 1975.
Sure. My father was a 33-year-old banker. His name was Frank Connor. He was a first-generation American, really living the American dream. And he went to lunch with clients at Fraunces Tavern, which is downtown New York. It's where George Washington bade farewell to his officers after the Revolutionary War. And he sat down on a Friday afternoon to have lunch with some clients. We were going to be celebrating my 9th and my brother's 11th birthday that night. And a man walked a package in and set it behind the table where he was sitting, and within minutes it detonated, and it murdered my father instantly, and 3 other men, wounded 60 or more. It was a colossal, huge bomb that shook the whole financial district in New York, and it was proudly taken responsibility for by a group called the FALN, the Armed Forces for National Liberation, a Puerto Rican Marxist group who claimed to be attacking reactionary corporate executives, and that we were in a war against this Marxist organization. So our lives were shattered just out of the blue. I mean, it was going to be my 9th birthday party that night with him. I had turned 9 on January 20th, and this is January 24th. And our lives had been disrupted and destroyed. And that's what happened that day, and an awful lot has transpired since, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Well, I'm sure. I know for some people this is new information, so give them a little information on FALN.
Sure. The FALN was a small organization based in Chicago and New York. They were Cuban-trained and financed. They blew up about 130 bombs in the U.S.
That's important for them to know. This was not a one-off. This is not a one-off.
It wasn't a one-off. No. It was an early bomb. Their first bomb had detonated in December of 1974, only a couple months before, and it maimed a police officer, Angel Poggi. He was a Puerto Rican, and he was on his first day on the job when they set a booby trap for him. Wow. So these guys were ruthless, and they were indiscriminate in a lot of ways. They went on this long terror campaign for over 10 years.
Right, I was going to say, so how long before they were caught?
It took an awfully long time before they were caught. It was actually, the Joint Terrorism Task Force was founded on the FALN bombings in New York and in Chicago. They were caught in Chicago in 1980, 81, and 82. They were arrested. They were tried. They refused to represent themselves at trial. They only spoke at sentencing, where they threatened to kill Judge McMillan. And the judge carried 2 revolvers under his robe because these guys were threatening to kill him. They said that no U.S. prison could hold them, and they were absolutely remorseless for their murders and mayhem.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, as sad as this situation is, at least they were found. They got heavy sentences, correct?
Yes.
That was the end of
between 55 and 70 years.
Right. So the end of the story was they all went to jail for 55, 70 years. They died in prison, and we all lived happily ever after, correct?
Not quite. Exactly. And that's where the politics and where all this stuff comes in.
I think we got enough time before the first break. Tell the listeners what happened to these terrorists who killed your father.
Well, they went to prison for, like we just said, long periods of time, and justly. I mean, they were fighting a war against us. They left communiques describing why they did what they did, and without any remorse. Like I said, they threatened to kill the judge at sentencing. One of them, William Morales, blew himself up in a Queens bomb factory on what would have been my dad's 37th birthday. He ended up escaping along with Joanne Chesimard and others to Cuba, where he is now. But the rest of the FALN who were in prison were put away for life, and you never would have heard my name except for 1999 when Hillary Clinton was getting set to run for senator from New York. Bill Clinton offered them executive clemency. And this was in August of 1999. They would have all walked out of prison, except that none of them accepted the clemency. They actually refused it. Clinton had put Eric Holder in charge. He was the Deputy Attorney General. Put Eric Holder in charge of getting the clemencies together for these people. He went to the pardon attorney, Margaret Love, who refused to go along with the clemency. She rejected it. So he fired her, hired another pardon attorney who gave them an options memo, and the clemencies were sprung in August of 99. They were all rejected. They took 30 days finally to accept the clemency, where all but one, Oscar Lopez Rivera, accepted the clemency and walked out of jail on September 10th, 1999. Lopez stayed in prison, and if his name sounds familiar, it's because I went to his parole hearing in 2011 and kept him in when he was looking to get out, and then Obama gave him clemency on his last day in office on January 20th, my birthday, 2017. So, and then Lopez was made a freedom hero, or tried to be made a freedom hero at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and in Chicago they named streets after him. He was a sworn terrorist, and at his parole hearing he refused to accept any responsibility. It was unbelievable. We went to the parole hearing in Terre Haute with the expectation that if he showed some contrition, that we would recommend that he be released. Well, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't give us that satisfaction.
Okay, hold it right there to the other side. And we're going to finish that up, and we're going to go over how you tied that to BLM. But I wanted to say, the people listening are in Chicago, so they definitely will remember the Oscar Lopez Rivera part and the Puerto Rican parade and him being a hero. And I'll talk about what their favorite son, Luis Gutierrez, said about him when we come back as well. You're listening to the Liberty Hour on AM 560, The Answer.
This is the Liberty Hour. Here's your host, Sean Thompson, on AM 560, The Answer.
Everybody knows that the day is
Welcome back to the Liberty Hour. Charles Love here, and we are speaking to Joe Connor, author and columnist. He's telling us about the terrorists who murdered his father and 3 others, and their ties and similarities to BLM. And before we get to the similarities, when we left on the other side, we were talking about Oscar Lopez Rivera, and which is going to tie into some of the similarities. But I was going to let everybody remind you all what Luis Gutierrez said about him. He said in a statement after he was released that he was, quote, overjoyed and overwhelmed by his release. Oscar is a friend, a mentor, and a family to me. That is the way he described a domestic terrorist. Yep. So, you got something you want to say before I talk about my first similarity?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, he's family. Did he ever think of the families that this guy destroyed? Like, the words that these politicians use, and I find that I end up having more animosity towards the politicians who say things like that and who use, like Clinton, who used and Holder and Obama and Biden, who use terrorism for politics, than I do the terrorists themselves, because we elect these politicians. We put our trust in them, and they use murderers to further their cause. And it is an absolute disgrace. And someone like Gutierrez, thank God he's out of Congress, but he did an awful lot of damage while he was there, and he continues to do it.
Well, see, you just set me right up to my first point. In your article, you talked about a couple of similarities, which we'll get to. But I think one of the number ones is that I have a list. And the number one, I have sympathetic politicians.
Yep.
So you had those that you mentioned, and Bernie Sanders, you could have added de Blasio, you could have added
Absolutely.
Cuomo, right?
Yep.
And then look at today with BLM. This country's literally on fire. And what have we had? We've had the Portland mayor. No, let's go back. We had the Seattle mayor when Trump said, man, somebody needs to do something in there. Well, why don't you just shut up and stay in the house? It's like a block party atmosphere around here until they broke into her house.
Right,
you got the Portland mayor. It's like, it's not my job to protect the citizens here. It's your job, and it's your fault, right? We have Mitt Romney going to a BLM march. We have everyone. I will say this clearly, and I'll say this on air here, and I'll continue to say it. Every politician, really everybody, but every politician who aligns themselves with BLM is guilty, right? As Jacob Blake's father said, guilty. Let's try them now. They are guilty. I don't care if they didn't really know. I don't care if they thought, well, I was only agreeing with this mushy part, not that part. You know what they're doing. You know what they believe. If you're on their side, you're against America. It's that simple today. And that's one of the similarities, right?
Yeah,
the politicians are in bed with BLM.
And you know, ignorance of the law is no excuse from it either. If you break the law,
you sure Pelosi just said that either. But Pelosi just said that if she didn't know that she couldn't get her hair done, then she was okay.
She didn't know about her. She didn't know
about her own law.
Yeah, she didn't know that her own law that she's been pushing and shaming people for breaking. It's not even. I don't know what it is. It's a decree. But in any event, you're absolutely right. These politicians have put themselves on the side of Black Lives Matter, the same way Obama and Biden releasing Oscar Lopez put themselves on his side. And there's direct connections between these groups. So, I mean, they're Marxist, right?
I was going to get to that. That was one of your articles, the Marxist beliefs. That's another similarity.
Yeah, and we have Susan Rosenberg, who is a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter, who was one of the people who broke William Morales out of prison. When I mentioned Morales before, he had blown himself up. He knocked out half his face and 9 of his fingers. He was getting prosthetic device in a prison, and he somehow escaped from prison with no freaking fingers. Climbed down a sheet rope and was whisked away by the likes of Susan Rosenberg, the family. That was a group of communists from the May 19th Communist Organization, from the Black Liberation Army, and these groups that got him out of there the same way they did with Joanne Chesimard.
And why was their name May 19th? Why did they name themselves May 19th?
Oh, because that was Ho Chi Minh's birthday. Why? Of course. What, you don't know that?
This is crazy. How can people not realize this? And here's another mix. Everybody on the right talks about how this isn't a pro-black movement, BLM. They're just 3 lesbians who are pushing the LGBTQ agenda. That's what they say, right? Well, what other similarities do we have?
Well, you have the May 19th communists who were a bunch of lesbians, too. Same thing.
They also had multiple groups, right? They were the Underground, the Family, the May 19th, the BLA, the Machete Wielders. For some reason, I like that name, right? And BLM.
The Weather Underground, too, that, Bill Ayers, who is a Chicago guy who Obama started his career at, the Weather Underground's bombs were the exact design that the FALN had, the exact. So if you talk to the bomb technicians from the era, they were identical. So these groups were completely connected. When they tried to break Oscar Lopez out of prison, and they did, they tried to break him out of Leavenworth, and the FBI got wind of it, and they were going to use explosives, helicopters, and automatic weapons. And when they traced down the explosives, it was the Weather Underground who were picking it up to use to blow him out. So when in my head, I think of the old Batman movie in a way, where all the Joker, the Riddler, and the Penguin were all in the same
together sometimes.
Yeah, they were all in the same group, and the common denominator to all this was Cuba. And what we saw with the Obama-Biden administration was opening up our relations with Cuba, who has been at war with us for 60 years.
Let's hold it
So-
right there, because I got to go with one more thing, and I want to save enough time to talk about your book and your movie and all that other kind of thing.
Sure.
But I wanted to point out some differences. I agree with you that there are a lot of similarities, but there's some differences that technically makes, even though they're not bombing, makes this harder to catch and harder to manage here. So like the financing is different, right? So you obviously know that they didn't have fat cats funding them. So they had to rob banks and armored cars and things of that nature. So now they don't have to break those laws because people give them money, right?
That's true. That was a different world.
Yeah.
They didn't have the internet in the 60s and 70s for that kind of stuff.
Right.
Absolutely
And those
right.
groups were largely condemned. We made fun of the politicians and talked about how they were complicit. But for the most part, like you talk about the Puerto Rican Day Parade, a lot of corporate sponsors pulled out of that parade because of that,
They
right?
were fantastic. They all pulled out when Lopez was going to be made this Puerto Rico the hero, freedom
That's
hero,
beautiful, right?
freedom hero for a Marxist.
But here's
Think
the
about
problem. But here's the problem. What are those corporations doing today when the enemy is BLM?
That's a really good point. I've been in corporate America for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this before, where corporations are putting up logos of subversive organizations or any organizations.
Yep.
They never did that, and now they're falling all over themselves to align themselves with a Marxist organization.
That's why in the long run, this might even be more dangerous because
Yes,
they don't
that's
have
a
to
fair
bomb
point.
anything to get attention. You're handing them the keys to the castle.
I know,
Right,
but
and they're going to reshape America, and we won't know it until no one pushes back and we lose, and then we're going to, how do we get here? So talk about your book, Shattered Lives.
Sure. I started the book, believe it or not, on September 10th, 2001, on the train on the way home from work. And my cousin Steve was a bond trader at Cantor Fitzgerald. He was my father's godson. And I started writing about the FALN clemencies, which happened exactly 2 years before, literally to the day. And the next day, I was in the city. I was putting my laptop in downtown, and I saw the side of the World Trade Center explode. And my cousin Steve was murdered that day. So I had started writing, and it changed the focus of my life in a lot of ways. And finally, a guy named Jeff Ingber had seen me on Fox, and he had written some books about his family's connection to the Holocaust, and he was able to put this together. He's brilliant, and he's a great guy. And we finally got this book. It took almost 18 years or something from beginning to get it finally published. And it talks about my dad, and it talks about the clemencies. It talks about the connections that we're discussing now, and it brings 9/11. There's a lot of connections there with 9/11. This some of the same people who've represented these communists have represented the FALN, the Al Qaeda, and the Blind Sheik, and these. So there's so many connections between everything, and our family seems to be at kind of the center of a lot of it. And the point is, I didn't want my dad to be forgotten, and he deserved a lot better than some politicians using his life for their political gain. And
so when is the movie going to come out?
The book is good. At the movie's in production now.
Oh, okay.
Shattered Lives movie, and my website is wewinamerica.com. I also have another book, The New Founders, which was so much fun. It brings the American founders to life in 2012, I guess, and it was so much fun to write with Mike Duncan, and we, so there's a lot. Look, we're just a regular family doing the best we can.
I appreciate you. We Win America. Joe Connor, thank you for joining us.